Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Conversations. I'm Nancy Bowser. We have Connie Stoffel and my dear friend Laurie Ishii. And Laurie has an amazing, incredible testimony. The Lord has rescued and redeemed her from hard drugs, gangs, prostitution, living on Skid Row, multitude suicide attempts, including jumping off an 8-story building, right, Laurie? Cancer and anything else we should highlight there that I missed?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe as we go along, but like almost being killed by a few people. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So, Laurie's history is just so complex, and there's just way too much to get involved in all of this. I know she's been worried about that. Like, how am I going to be able to communicate everything in a small time period? But I do want to tell you guys.
Yeah.
So, Laurie has written a book. It's right here, Breaking the Chains by Laurie Ishii. Is that upside down? It looks, I mean,
Oh,
backwards. Okay. In mine, it looks funny, but yeah. So I encourage everybody to get a copy of this book because this will give a lot more details into her story. Um, and and you can get that on Amazon, right, Laurie?
yeah, yeah. And I actually, I've given out a lot, and I actually gave one to an LAPD officer, um, and he told me that he read it like uh I don't know, couple nights or a couple days, whatever, and he really could relate to it because he actually had worked on Skid Row for a while and he was really touched. Yeah. Yeah. So it was awesome. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is an awesome book and it's easy to read, but it's also hard because I know you and I know the things, that you've gone through. It's just incredible. But the Lord has been so good in your life. And so Lori and I have known each other. I figured it out, Lori. It's been about 16 years. Can you believe
Oh, I
that?
thought it was longer.
Well,
Well,
Nancy,
I think it was
you've been sharing Lori with me for many years. I knew it was over 10. At
okay.
least
So
you have
maybe
told me about her.
longer.
So that doesn't surprise me at all because, I
Yeah,
remember
no, that does
Lori
sound
way
right now I
back
think about it.
and praying for her, way back.
Yeah.
So, mhm,
Thank you.
yeah.
Yes, yes. So I just Lori just has this infectious love for Jesus, you guys, that just overflows. And she lives in the heart of LA and not far from Skid Row, even. So you do a lot of work down there on Skid Row. And it's like she'll be out walking and she'll just while we're talking on the phone, she'll just stop and be like, "Oh, hey, hi. Oh, yeah." And just start talking about Jesus with people. And I love it because I feel like I'm right there with her. So, in fact, when Lori and I met, it was Lori, you had a ministry at that time to pimps and prostitutes, right? With
Yes.
husband Daryl. But what led you into this hard life that you had?
Wow. Oh, well, it's funny because my parents always said, if you start smoking cigarettes, then you're going to drink. And if you drink, then you're going to do drugs. And, you know, as a kid, you're like, you, you think your parents know nothing, but they were right. Uh, I, I tried to be good. I mean, I was raised in an Asian family, strict, uh, kind of perfectionist, you know, they're very concerned about your image, reputation, what people think. And so my parents were very strict, and my dad was physically abusive. So I think when I wanted to please him so bad, and I wanted his acceptance, but no matter what I did, it wasn't good enough. And then I was trying so hard to be good. And then, and I even stayed out of trouble when I was in like grammar school and junior high. I went to parties and I would watch people kind of being foolish, very foolish. And it didn't it didn't entice me. I was like, wow, what, I don't want to be like this. But I mean, they were partying, and it kind of looked fun. I was laughing at them. I wasn't laughing with them. And then my parents decided to send me to Catholic school. And when they sent me to Catholic school, I was not happy, not happy at all. And that's when I learned religion and rebellion. I mean, I don't know that I knew I was so rebellious, but I know that that's when I'm like, if this is what God is like, I don't want to have anything to do with it. And so I became very rebellious. And it didn't happen immediately, but it happened over time of just uh, hanging out with the wrong people. I mean, I I hung out with like the in crowd, but at the same time, I never felt like I fit in. And I remember, but I think this is like Satan's plot and plan for people, But anyways, I um I like this. I had a crush on this one guy, and one day he came up to me and he was like, "Yeah, I like you, but I would never go steady with you because you're not white." And I was like, and that was when I first, because I never thought about it. Kids are not raised prejudiced or racist, we don't, kids don't see color, and I never even thought about that. Like, and then when he said that, that was the first time, I guess, rejection um affected me, and where I thought, what's wrong with me? Something like something must be wrong. Well, how am I different? Or I'm different, or yeah, that affected me. And then when I got sent to Catholic school, it was inner city kids, all different, races and um Asians as well. But then this is where the break dancing came out, and so yeah, I started hanging out with people that were break dancing, and then they're from like Carson. And when I started hanging out with them, and we would go to parties, and there's break dancing, but break dancing turned into, like, there was break dancing crews, and from different cities or whatever, and they would battle, on break dance. And then whoever, it would always end up in a fight. It would always end up in a fight, and pretty soon fights became gangs. I mean, or crews became gangs, and then there was no dancing anymore. It was just fighting and territories, and then guns came out and drive-bys, and yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, the first shooting I saw was at the Biltmore downtown hotel, and yeah, there was a shooting. We went to go to a dance in the Biltmore, and and there was a shooting, and me and my friend Renee ran out to the street. We got into one of my homeboys' cars. We drove, we pulled out of the parking lot, and that was the first time I saw somebody get shot, literally like execution style. Uh, and I was high. I had started smoking weed and drinking, and um, yeah, it was crazy. We were at a red light, and had a guy on his knees and just shot him in the head. And then after that, I saw a lot of things, drive-bys. We get in fights, and because I believe that because my dad was so angry, and I knew anger, I ran away from home. Like, I had a fascination with death. It was actually, I think I had a spirit of death, but I really thought about, like, I just had this weird, dark fascination with death. And the first time I tried to commit suicide was when I was 12. I got raped when I was, I don't even remember if I was 15 or 16. I'm pretty sure I was a freshman or at the beginning of sophomore year.
Was
I
that
was going
before
out with,
was that
huh?
was that before you were in the gang or
When
during?
I just started hanging out with him because he was in the gang. Yeah.
Mm.
And I was a virgin. He was quite a bit older, been to prison, which back then I thought it was cool. And yeah, he basically laced a joint, and we smoked it, and his friends were with us. We were supposed to go to a party. I know it was planned, and just, yeah, I remember everything like
Wow.
vividly. But and I went through a process of healing when what see it's so crazy because at that age, like, I didn't know what the word rape was, even. It was like he was my boyfriend, so it was where I was thinking, well, if I hadn't have been smoking weed, that wouldn't have happened, or blaming, automatically trying to think of like how I could have avoided that. But I didn't realize until years later that he violated me, and how it wasn't my fault. I started to realize, because I never really dealt with that what happened, and there was a lot of shame. Oh, yeah, I don't know.
Well, and you were also speaking of your dad's anger being there, also present, and all of the mixture of everything. You brought that. So here now we have the spirit of rejection that has hit you by this time of the rape. You've got, you've already tried to commit suicide. So we've got that spirit of death that's come and kind of visited you slightly, for the first time. And following through with that, so it's actually taking, the hand of the spirit of death and and swallowing those pills, and now moving forward, you've now been,
And that
raped,
was
and
going, I
there's a
think,
lot going on. Yeah.
because there was a lot of shame, and then but I think I masked it. But, I was a virgin. And then, so after that, well, I don't share this in the book, and I don't know. Maybe you can edit this out. It was so insulting because okay, so after this happened, I started bleeding, right? And I thought, oh my God, like I started my period. Like I didn't even know what happened. And then um, I said, oh, I started my period. I need to get tampons. And he's like, I broke your cherry. And I was like, what does that mean? You know, it was so awful. But he went and got me um, tampons and dropped me off. And I remember just feeling so dirty and just like, yeah. And he dropped me off. I went in my house. I went to bed, and I was just like crying, and I just felt gross. And the next day he called me and acted like nothing. Like, hey, what are you doing? You know, and I was like, what? And I met him. I was so mad. And I met him, and I was just infuriated. And he's like, were you really a virgin? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, I go, why? And he goes, because you weren't that tight. And that was like, oh my gosh, you know. And I was so mad. And I told him, I never want to see you again. Like, it's over. What? When I started writing, because I took a writing class when I was writing the book like over 20 years ago, and they had a like really tune into every uh every sense, you know, your smell, touch, sight, what are I don't know, the five senses. And so I had to like go deep. But before I took that class, one of my friends, she read what I had written, and she was like, oh my gosh, Laurie, this is really serious. Because I was like, oh yeah, I was with this guy, he was my boyfriend, he raped me in the car, and blah blah blah. And she's like, this is serious. Like, you just brushed over it like nothing. And I'm like, well, it is what it is, you know? And, but then when I took this writing class and I had to like really relive it, ooh, I was like pissed. I mean, I was like, he raped me. And it was like, I had to rewrite it quite a few times, but it was so healing.
Hey,
Yeah.
so Lori, you were married by the time you were 17, right?
Yeah.
To your first husband. Can you tell us about that?
Um, well, I think I just wanted to get away from home. Because, well, I do think that being raped triggered me to be more promiscuous. And because I didn't deal with it, I stuffed it down and just was angry. So I had a lot of rage, unforgiveness, along with the anger from my dad. And that opened me up to be even more rebellious. And like, I loved being in the gang and getting into fights. It was just like, looking back now, it was like a way to just get all that rage out of me. And so I know that rape did affect me, but it just hardened me like a lot, to where I'm like, nobody's ever gonna mess with me again. Like, you know, um,
So
I think that
how did you transition from that guy that raped you, because he was your boyfriend for a season, correct? And then you transitioned to, and that was what, about 15 years old. Then you transitioned into meeting your first husband. Were they of the
no,
gang
I
family
went
or?
out with other guys. I went out, I slept around, and then and then I, I met my first husband, who was one of the gang leaders. And I think I've never really searched this out or thought about it, but like thinking about it right now, I think I wanted power and reputation, maybe, but just the fact that he was one of the leaders, because it wasn't like he was attractive to me or anything. It was like just that he had a quiet authority in a way. Um, of course, not godly authority, but he was a leader, and so that's what really got me. Yeah, and I was young. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna be the first one of my friends to get married. I didn't have any idea of the importance or the commitment of it. Was like when we went to have our honeymoon, we went to Hawaii, and he got a tattoo of my name on his arm in big letters, and I was like, because I knew, I'm like, this is not like, he goes, now you're next. He goes, get my name on you. And I was like, because I was like, this is not gonna last. You know what I mean? Like I already knew, like this is just for fun, or I don't know, maybe not fun, but just it's just a thing. It's not. I don't know how long this is gonna last.
So how long
You
did
know,
it last?
a couple years, and then
Well, hold on.
separation.
While you were married to him, is that when you got shot?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
tell us about that because I think
Okay.
that was really significant in your life.
Oh yeah. But it was like we weren't together. We were separated, but I had been trying to be stay out of trouble because I could see that this path I'm going on is death. There was just I knew this is like going nowhere. And so I tried to get out, and so we separated. My dad gave me an apartment, and a small apartment near his workplace. He was a dental technician, and he had a lab, and he wanted me to, help him out. So I was doing that, trying to stay out of trouble. But I was letting my homeboys come over, and we drink or whatever. But I was still keeping my job. And okay, so wait, a little backstory. This one girl, she had set up my homeboys, and because she was going out with like a rival gang member, and so she set up my homeboys. These guys came and shot up my friend's block. We lived on the block, and a bunch of other guys lived on the same block. So, like, one of my friends' mom almost got shot because they shot up our houses. So I was like, man, if I ever see this girl, I am going to, you know, hurt her badly. And so I've always been a kind of person that, like, if I say something, I'm gonna do it. And it's like, I don't know what that is, but it's like I'm, yeah, if I say it, I'm gonna do it. And I know the enemy knew that too. It was pride for sure. But so Primo comes over, and he's like, hey, we're going to this party, and this rival gang's gonna be there, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, no, I'm trying to stay out of trouble. And he said her name, she's gonna be there. And I was like, and he goes, yeah, she's gonna be there. And I'm like, and literally, it was like remember what you said. You said if you ever see her, you're going to do this and this and that. And it was like that pride was just like, well, I can't go back on my word. And I just think it's interesting, like the enemy used that, my pride, to get me to go to this party and I get shot instead of anything happening to her, you know? And there's it's yeah, it's interesting because God is so awesome because I don't know, I know I'm going off on kind of a rabbit trails, but after I got saved, the Lord used her to teach me, I guess, obedience, like one thing of like dying to my flesh, because one of my homeboys had committed suicide, and I think I'd been saved maybe a year, and I went to the funeral. I'm sitting, I sit down, I'm sitting a few feet behind her, and I hear, remember what you said? Like it was like, and I felt the, you know, and it was so crazy. I picked up, I had brought my Bible with me. I wanted to share Jesus with my homeboys. And I brought my little Bible, I opened it up, and I turned to Hebrews 12. And it's like, since you are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, throw off everything and the sin that so easily entangles, um, and run with perseverance the race that was set before us. Be like Jesus. And then, well, verse 4 says, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood. And I was like, and then the Holy Spirit said, I want you to go up to her and tell her that you forgive her. Because she knew. And I was like, and I said, oh my gosh. And I'm wrestling with this through the whole service. And when we went outside to the gravesite, I saw her and I just knew I had to do it. And I like walked up to her, said her name. She turned around, looked at me, and I said, I just want you to know I became a Christian. I forgive you. I walked away. It was like, whew. But
Yep.
yeah. And you know, the awesome thing about it was that right when I did that, something broke and I was free of like that, all that anger and bitterness and rage and my pride. It was like something broke in the spirit, and I felt free. It was crazy, but I know that was kind of off on.
No, that's perfect. I'm glad you brought that in. Can
But
you
getting
yeah,
shot,
tell
that
us
was
what you learned about that? What was it that when you got shot, what was it that impacted your life at that time?
that God had a plan for my life. That was the thing, but it didn't stop me from still being rebellious. But it was my first experience with believing that there was a God. That was the first time because I I really didn't believe. I believed in Satan, but when I got shot and they put me in that, well, the a priest came and gave me my last rites, and I was mad because I was like, who are you? Like, because he's giving me my last rites, and I'm like, I literally said there's no effing way I'm gonna die. Like, what are you doing? And then they, in the ambulance, they were putting stuff on me, and sticking IVs. And then when I I'm laying there and I remember just, it was like I had this reality check, like I could die. Like, and just an instant realization that if I die, I'm going to hell. Like I knew, I don't know how I knew, but I knew. And I'm like, just this like terror came over because I was like, I'm going to hell if I don't make it. And so I start praying really fast. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you. Blessed art thou. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Because I didn't know how to pray. I was just like praying like what Catholics pray, you know. And I'm just like, oh my God. And then I looked up, and there was this. I guess it was an angel. I mean, it was like sparkly, and I I feel like it was a man. I thought it was like what the Holy Spirit would look like, but I don't know, you know. And I knew almost, I guess, telepathically. I knew it was like I could understand I knew it was a he, and it was like I knew I was not going to die, and I had peace immediately, and then yeah, but that didn't change my life. Like I went to the hospital. They had to put a tube in my lung. The bullet was a 38. It went through my liver, my lung, diaphragm, and got lodged in my back, like a half an inch away from my spine. They told me that if it had been a hollow point, I would have been dead. Um, they showed me the bullet. It was like all smashed, and the cops did. And yeah, it it oh, the doctor told me if it had been any closer to my spine, I would have been paralyzed from my waist down.
The Lord most certainly has a plan for your life. Honestly, that's huge. I mean, that's a big deal. Huge deal.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
But
that happening.
in
And
a way, though, it was like because I lived through it,
Mhm.
I it was like this prideful again. Me and pride just needs to die all the time, every day.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I think I felt invincible after that. You know, it was like, well, you know, I don't know. It didn't stop me from, you know, I got out of the hospital. I think I was out of the hospital like a week after I was out of the hospital. I get into a fight. I have a full arm cast wrapped around and I still get in a fight with a girl. It was so crazy.
well,
And
Laurie, why don't we go and into your testimony about how you found the Lord? I know that you've gotten into a lot of other things. So anytime during that you want to tell us about any of that, that's fine. But tell us about how you first encountered Jesus and what got you there.
first encounter
Well, I mean, as far as
Your
salvation.
salvation.
Yeah. When you
salvation.
know,
Oh, when
yeah.
my best friend, well, God had been doing things in my life where well, okay, after I got shot, I I decided eventually, like not long after, I was like, this is just like a dead end. And so I started hanging out with my sister who was going out to Hollywood a lot, or every night practically. And so and then with my homeboys too, they started getting more into drugs, like uh, mar- uh not just marijuana, but like methamphetamine and crack, cocaine or freebase back then, came out, and so we were getting high, and it was like the more we were getting high, the less any of the gang stuff really mattered because we all became like addicts, you know, and so that's when I started hanging out in Hollywood, and yeah, started hanging out in Hollywood like every night. And with that, my drug addiction became even more just. But I didn't even think I was an addict back then. It was like, oh, I just party. That was a lie. But cocaine, and then but it was empty, and so my mom had become a Christian, like gradually. She didn't have a radical, conversion. She was listening to Christian radio and watching TV. No, was she watching TV? I don't know. She was just listening to Christian radio. And I would come home drunk or hungover or whatever and go to sleep. And she was always complaining, like, oh my gosh, every time you use this place as a hotel, and like I'm your maid, whatever. And and I got sick of hearing her, but also like I got sick of that. And my best friend had invited me to her boyfriend's party that she was having. She made me promise, like, whatever you do, do not bring drugs. Promise me. And I was like, yeah, 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 yeah. Well, I didn't keep my promise. And even though she didn't know right then, I gave drugs to like all her boyfriend and other people, whoever wanted some, like mushrooms and cocaine, whatever. And then eventually she found out. And my it was like perfect timing. God ordained everything. I was supposed to go out to Hollywood to a club with my friend. He was going to pick me up. I lived with my mom in Redondo Beach, and the clubs were in Hollywood. And my friend called me from the freeway, and this is like, yeah, when cell phones first came out. But he was like, "I can't pick you up. My car broke down." And my mom, I don't know if she heard or what, but she knew that I wasn't going to be able to go out. And she's like, "Oh, since you're all dressed up and you have nowhere to go, why don't you come with me? I'm going to a meeting at church." And I was like, "A meeting?" But so I was like, okay, whatever. It was a 12-step meeting. I had been to AA, and AA, I was like, these people are still in bondage. It was like, one girl told me she went to like 5 meetings a day, and she's like smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee like a fiend. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to go to a meeting 5 times a day. Like, that does not sound like freedom to me. And every time I went to a meeting and people would talk about getting high or drinking or drugs or whatever, I'd be like, oh my God, I just want to get high. so I didn't do well with AA. And I mean, not to knock it, but yeah. Especially I found out that like there's Freemasonry like connections. But anyways, I found that out way later. But so um I went with my mom. I walked in, and literally it felt different. And when they started giving, people started sharing, it was like, these people are different. And people were saying, like, God took away my desire to use. Never heard that before. Like, how could that happen? Like, you don't want to use anymore, because I could try to convince myself or like make myself not, use, try to control my addiction, but it didn't take away my wanting to do it. So that really affected me, where I was like, wow. And I could see a difference. These people were like smiling and, joyful, not like and so, and then a friend of mine, one of my homeboys, like from, known him for years, he had gotten saved. about a year before, and a radical uh, transformation. And he was like, I was living with him, and he came home one morning, and I had been up all night. He walks in the door, and I was like, dude, what did you do? Because he was glowing, and but I didn't know what that was. And I'm like, I want some, and he's like, it's Jesus. And I said, what is, he's like, I got saved. I'm like, dude, like, go away. He wanted to tell me, and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, but never mind. I thought it was you had drugs. But I saw God transform his life over that year. He tried to talk to me, and I was like into New Age, and he talked to me about, like, Jesus, and I'd be like, dude, I think I was reincarnated, and just all that weird stuff. And yeah, but I saw his life change. I saw Jesus start to change his life. So I can see how the Lord was pulling at me, or persevering, or not. He was romancing me, um, pursuing, not persevering. um,
Too.
yeah, yeah, that too. Oh boy, he very long suffering. God is so long suffering. So I saw the changes in my friend's life. It just all came to a head, kind of like, because he kept trying to invite me to church, and I'm like, I'm not going to church. And he said, who needs to take a shower? The one who's dirty or the one who's clean? I'm like, the one who's dirty. And he goes, that's like Jesus, like, um, you don't have to clean yourself up before coming to him. You come as you are, dirty, and he'll clean you up. And I was like, oh. So when we were going around a circle of people were, sharing. And when they got to me, I broke, and I was just crying. And I was like, my friend told me that, and I told who needs to take the shower. But I felt the Holy Spirit so strong. And so when I got home, I walk in the house, the phone rings. It's my best friend, and she is livid. I can't believe you. You promised that you would never da 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 da. And she's like, I never want to talk to you again. Bam, click. And I'm like, and it was like all at once, the Lord just showed me how selfish I had been, how, like, because I always thought, like, I'm not affecting anybody, I'm doing drugs, I'm sleeping around, I'm doing whatever, it's only affecting me. But then, and then I realized, like, my mom saying, you treat me like a maid, and you just party all night, come home and go to sleep and do it again. And it was like everything started, I started realizing, like, oh my gosh, my actions do affect other people. And so, because um, I really loved my friend. It was like I never meant to hurt her. I I just it was like I was just so selfish. I just wanted whatever I wanted. And at the expense of anyone else. And so that started to affect me. And my mom's coffee table, and she had a Bible on there, and I just opened it up, and it said what to read when you need forgiveness. And it was Isaiah 1:18. Though your sins come, reason with me, says the Lord. Though your sins be as scarlet, I'll make them white as snow. And I don't know the whole thing, but and then Psalm 51, have mercy on me according to your unfailing love, according to your great compassion, blot out my transgressions. Against you and you only have I sinned. And I was like, wow, I sinned against God. Like, not only did I affect these people, but I sinned against God. And so I really had like a real, like a realization that it's not about, not all about me. And so I prayed best to my ability, and I just prayed what I knew at the time, which was God will help me get off of drugs. It wasn't like, but at the same time, I'm like, God, I'm sorry for doing this, for this, for this, and just everything I could think of, like having sex, or no, I don't know if I did that, the sex thing, because I didn't think having sex like outside of marriage was bad or anything, until, I'll tell you about that in a second. But where I was like, for doing drugs, for hurting other people, for whatever, just whatever I can think of. And then I'm like, I will serve you for the rest of my life if you take away my desire to use drugs. And then I went to bed. And the next day I woke up, something had happened. And I I was like, I felt it. I felt like I had new, like, spiritual glasses or spiritual eyes. Like, I noticed everything. It was like my eyes literally had been open. I was like looking at the trees. I'm like, wow, look at all these leaves. Like, I just appreciated, nature. It was crazy. And I'm like doing dishes, and my mom walks in. She's like, what happened to you? She's like, what is going on? I'm like, I don't know. It's like, and about a week later, I went to church with my friend that had been trying to share the Lord with me, and the pastor talked about being born again, and I was like, that's what I am. Like, I just knew. I'm like, oh, that's what happened to me, and so there was that. But then I also had been living with a guy, and the first time we're gonna have sex, he was like on top of me, and all of a sudden I'm looking around. I'm like, I feel like somebody's in the room, like watching me, and I'm like, I don't think I'm supposed to be doing this, and I'm like, I don't want to do this. I feel like I'm not supposed to. And no, I've been sleeping around my whole life, not my whole life, but as soon as after I got raped, I'm like, whatever. I had never been taught. Well, no, my parents might have said like, don't have sex, until you're married, but I never took it seriously. But it was so crazy just having that conviction and literally feeling like somebody was watching me. And so, yeah, and then we didn't have sex after that. And
Now, how old were you, sweetheart, when this encounter happened?
22.
22. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then and I was also pregnant. I was 5.5 months or 5 months pregnant, about 5.5 months pregnant from a trick. um and I was so angry. Oh, and that all had to do with me coming to the Lord too, because I had an abortion before. I wanted to get one again. I was doing everything I could to try to get one. I, every time I went to the clinic, like, I didn't have the right paperwork, or I forgot my ID because I was on drugs too. And I was like, yeah, there was always a roadblock. And so I did go to the Catholic Church one day, and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm starting to show. This is like, and then I would feel the baby, especially when I'd go to the club. Like, I don't know, the music would be booming, and then she'd start kicking, and I'm like, oh, just, I couldn't do enough drugs to deny that the pregnancy, and so when I was at the Catholic Church, I prayed, like, God, I don't know what I'm going to do. Help me, if you're real. And then I went to uh in the foyer, or whatever you call it, I saw all these pamphlets, and one of them said, what uh or alternative to abortion. So I took that to this, because I'm like, what's an alternative to abortion? I'm like thinking, what could it possibly be? And then we go and we see these two nuns, and one of them takes me in a little back room, and I'm like, so what are the alternatives? And she's like, well, adoption. I'm like, and so when she's like, they have a home for pregnant mothers and blah blah blah, and I'm just like, no way. I was mad, because I'm like, you expect me to carry a baby for 9 months and give it away? No way, I'm not doing that. And I was like, I might have even cussed her out. I was like so mad. And I walked out, and I told my friend. He's like sharing his testimony with the other nun, and I'm like, come on, we're leaving. I was like so mad. And we left. And yeah, I thought that was it. And then right after I got saved, within, I don't know if it was that week, I mean, things were happening quick. And I went to the bathroom. I'm on the toilet. I feel the baby move. And I'm like, the Holy Spirit said, you've been trying to murder a child. And I was like, and it wasn't like mean. It wasn't like, you've been trying to murder a child. It was just matter of fact. And I was like, I have. And, like, what is the scripture? I'm not sure. I know it's in Corinthians, but Paul says that the godly sorrow leads to repentance, but worldly sorrow leads to death. And it was like, I had godly sorrow, because I was like, oh my gosh, like, I have been doing this. Like, I mean, I did some horrible things. I was like punching myself in the stomach. I drank a bottle of vinegar because somebody told me that if I drank vinegar, I'd have a miscarriage. I mean, just like, yeah, it was awful. But so I still had the number of that pamphlet, that it was a Catholic organization, and I called them, and they helped me to the point of literally babysitting for my mom, and one of the nuns watching my little sister, and the other one taking me to the doctor appointments. Like, they were amazing, and they were born again too. They were born again Catholics, Christian Catholic, and I'm so grateful for them. And yeah, that, and I went through the adoptions process, or whatever. Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
But that's when God really, I mean, God was just talking to me.
yeah.
Yeah, lots
Okay,
happened.
so about 22, then you finally kind of just had this aha moment,
Hmm.
spiritually, where God just
Yeah,
came in and kind of revealed himself in many
made
different.
himself real.
Yep, yep, made himself real. I like that.
And then very soon after that, yeah, and very soon after that, I was made aware of how real the evil and demonic was. Yeah, but I the first job that I had as a Christian, um, it was called the Lord's Place, and it was a Christian bookstore, and I had only worked a couple jobs before, not seriously, as a teenager. One was my dad's restaurant, and so I had never really had a real job, but and it's so crazy. I become a Christian. I think, well, the first thing I need to do is get a job. I don't know, I was, and so I'm like, well, I think maybe my mom probably told me I needed to get a job too. But so I went to the Lord's Place bookstore, and I was so on fire for God and just being honest. And so when I filled out the application, they asked me, have you ever been convicted of anything? And I just said yes. And then, have you ever, been in jail? Yes. Have you ever been on drugs? Yes. you know, and so they interviewed the John, I think he's passed away by now, but he interviewed me and asked me, and I told him everything, like, yeah, Jesus did this, my life, da, 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 da. And they gave me the job. And so I worked there for a couple years. Yeah. But I read everything. And one of the first books I read was He Came to Set the Captives Free by Dr. Rebecca Brown. And that was like, yeah. Immediately, though, it was like I started having visitations, like demonic attacks and crazy. Yeah. Like I had been like real deep involved with witchcraft or the occult, but in enough, where the enemy had definitely had legal rights to mess with me. But I was into new age and reincarnation and astrology, um, mind control, that I didn't even know what that was until the Lord showed me, because he told me I was doing it, and I was like, oh. like, I God was doing so many miracles, and my sister and we hated each other, like before, we had parted on such bad ways, and like I wanted to literally like hurt her. Um and and it's so crazy because the Lord, I believe the dreams were from the Lord, but I had dreams of me, like I had beaten her up quite a few times. I was the older sister, but I was so angry at her, and I'm like, oh my gosh. I would have fantasy thoughts of like kicking her butt. And I had dreams like for a week. Every night I had dreams like of beating her up, and then it got less and less, and then all of a sudden in my dream I'm talking to her, and then I'm telling her about Jesus, and then the last dream I had, I led her to the Lord, and like a couple days later, or maybe even a day later, I don't remember, but she called me and she was crying, and she's like, please pick me up, I'm so sick. And she was like 80 pounds, and she'd been using, and uh yeah, so I picked her up, and I the Lord had used my dreams to like soften my heart to where, I don't know, if she had just called me when I didn't have those dreams, I probably would have been like, "Boop," you know, like, help yourself, like, I'm not helping you, but God gave me a heart for her, and I actually prayed with her to receive Jesus, and then she got radically saved. She's not serving the Lord now, but it was like, um she immediately stopped cussing. She didn't believe that I had been praying for her. I literally, because once I was like, I'm like, man, I was watching Benny Hinn on TBN, and he was like, at that time he had like a big mail bag full of mail, and he would pick one out and he'd be like, you know read a letter, and like pray over it. And I'm like, I'm gonna write to him and pray for my sister, right? And well, right after, maybe a month after she got saved, and I've been like, oh my gosh, I had prayed for you. And she's like, yeah, right. You hated me, And she happened to be over at where I was staying, and I turned on TVN. Benny Hinn comes on. I don't know if I should say Benny Hinn, but anyways, he pulls a letter out of his bag, and he goes, this letter is from Laurie. She's praying for her sister, and I don't want to even say her name, but because I don't know where she's at with the Lord. But yeah, and we went, oh my gosh, and we were crying, like literally just like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Yeah, and that was a special thing that God did. Yeah.
Well,
So
that is special. And so you walked with the Lord for a little while and then you relapsed, right? I know there have been two major relapses in your life where you ended up back on drugs, back on the streets, and things like that. Is that correct?
yeah,
Okay.
back all the way, pretty much all the way.
Okay.
Where
So,
were?
can you explain to us what led you to go from this really on fire Christian to relapsing? Because here's the deal, we all relapse in one way or another. We fall. I want to know what it was in your life that triggered you, or when you got triggered, what was it that caused you to fall away like you did for a while?
Well, looking back, I realized that, well, for one thing, compromise. I, I first didn't know what the word compromise meant, except for in the worldly sense. Like, if you're in a relationship, sometimes you have to compromise. But like, I didn't know what compromise as a Christian was. And then, so I compromised. um, I'm trying to think of how to even like define it, because kind of pushing the envelope, but not sinning, but maybe doing everything but, or doing things that were going against my conscience, but really weren't sin. At that time, smoking was a sin. And that, I'm not saying that like for everybody, but my mind would go from it, like, for me to compromise, my conscience would would make me automatically go, well, now that I did this, I might as well. So I was very careful not to do certain things, because for me at that time, smoking was like, well, now that I smoked, I might as well drink. And then if I were, I'd think, well, no, because if I drank, then I'd want to do coke. So I was, in the beginning, I was good at not doing, even though I didn't know what compromise was. Um, I was good at just like, no, I know I can't smoke. So I think the enemy got in by, well, a lot of ways. But when I had to have my wisdom teeth taken out, and I had Vicodin.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first time where I was like, ooh, I like these. And I tried to get some more, but I couldn't. And then I kind of forgot it. But then after I had my son, he was 9 pounds, 11 ounces. He was pretty big. And, I was like 95 pounds. So I literally, he ripped me from front to back. Like, I had to get stitches. So I was in a lot of pain. The doctor gave me Vicodin, but so I was getting high off of them. And then I started to, because my doctor could only give me so much. Then my mom had fibromyalgia. Wow. But I was like, oh, hey, I'm in pain, and I was, so I could rationalize that. I was in pain. Like I got ripped from front to back, and she was like, "Oh yeah," because she didn't know, and so I would started taking it, and she's like, "Wow, you're taking a lot," She goes, "You should go see the doctor," because I was in so much pain, and I went to see him, and he diagnosed me with the same thing that I had fibromyalgia. So he gave me 100.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Well,
much.
so Lori, compromise got you back into compromise and justification got you back into that cycle, the downward cycle
Yeah.
of abuse to your own body again, and you ended up back on the streets, right? At that
Yeah.
time. Yeah, and
Well, that's how I started doing heroin eventually, because eventually the doctors cut me off because they knew like she's addicted. So they cut me off. And yeah, I mean, I walked away from my son, I walked away from everything. I ended up, uh, I worked for a little bit. I was working in a salon, and then I met a guy, Johnny, who became my boyfriend, but he was doing heroin. He was smoking heroin, and um, I was smoking crack. Um, but heroin or chasing the dragon, I didn't know what it was. And I'm like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Chasing the dragon." And I'm like, "I want to try it." And he let me try it, and I was like, "Ooh," And then that was the beginning of the end. I mean, because yeah, then it was heroin because my body already had that taste for opiates. When I did the heroin, I was like, whoa, like it was like a familiar, yeah, familiar spirit, from the Vicodin because it's the same family. And it was like, oh, yeah, this is, yeah. So that's how I started doing that
so
again.
okay, Lori, so I would really like for you to explain when you came back to the Lord, what was it that you learned? I know that we've talked in the past about the cost of following Christ. Did you know the first time you gave your life to the Lord and he miraculously delivered you from drugs and you started living for him, did you understand at that point what being a Christian really meant and the cost of following him?
No, not even close. Um, Not even close. Well, especially now that I've been a Christian for what, 30? Oh my gosh, I'm 57, so I'm lame at math. I don't know, but uh 35 years maybe. Um, you know, I wasn't raised Christian, so like I didn't know, but American Christianity is just like so watered down, and like so I didn't know. I mean, even though I went to an awesome church, I got to say that the pastor that I had, I'm so grateful because I got really grounded. I mean, with the word. Looking back though, I think I had so many strongholds and just stuff, garbage.
Let's
I
talk
mean, just
about that for a moment. Let's talk about deliverance. Did you go through deliverance?
not when I first got saved, no. And then I didn't know about deliverance. Well, I did a little bit because of Rebecca Brown's book. but it was like, well, this woman was Elaine was in Satanism. I just dabbled with drugs. So I didn't think. Well, plus because the church taught that Christians couldn't have demons. And so I thought, yeah, Christians. I didn't know spiritual warfare or anything about how stuff gets in or how the enemy's tactics. I didn't know anything except for reading that book. And then uh but I the first encounter with the demonic that I mean, I had demonic encounters before I was a Christian, but then after I got saved, and again I was watching the same person on TVN, and he said, "Do you realize that when you become a Christian, all the demons of hell know who you are?" And I still had that gang mentality, and I was like, "Yeah, I want all the demons of hell to know who I am." And that night, my husband had fallen asleep. We slept under a big window and on a mattress, like not we didn't even have it was just on the floor. And he was sleeping. I came to bed. I laid down, and when you're right in that like almost sleep state, all of a sudden I just felt this weight on me, and I heard clearly, "So, you want all the demons of hell to know who you are?" And it was like a spirit of fear, just like it's just like I couldn't move. I was like, and I just knew I had to get the word Jesus out of my mouth. And finally, I was like, "Jesus." And as soon as I got the word out, I felt it like go out the window. It was so crazy. I felt it. And my husband shot up in bed and he goes, "Oh my God, what was that?" And I'm like, what was what?" And he said, "I felt something really cold go up my spine." I was like, "Oh my God." And the Lord showed me that there's no power except in the name of Jesus. And he's like, "Don't get cocky." That gang mentality, like, this is not, you don't challenge the enemy, and, don't think that you're going to get gangster with Satan or whatever. Um, yeah, like, and have a respect, not like I'm going to revere him or anything, but he's been around a lot longer than you have, so don't think that
Oh, so you didn't go through like any formal deliverance
no,
at
I didn't go through anything,
but what was
not
when
until
you
later.
started? Okay, later you did. We'll talk about that in a moment. But in following Christ, do you think that that demons did have to leave you? I mean, because
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Well,
follow, Romans 16, 19 and 20 talks about our obedience, and then it talks about that the God of peace will soon crush Satan
of
under
course.
your feet. So as we walk in obedience, and that to me
Yes.
is probably the biggest form of deliverance that
Deliverance.
is in that obedience and surrender to the Lord. And as we learn to die to ourselves. So what does that look like in your life? Can you tell us, um, well, what about desperation even? Did you have to get desperate? What part did desperation for Jesus play in you being able to overcome and stay clean?
Well, see, we're still way back when I first became a Christian, so it's been a process of over 30 years. So, I didn't go through deliverance, didn't know about deliverance, and then relapsed maybe about 4 years after. after I got saved, and we talked about it before, of the spirit of offense that opened up, legal right for the enemy to have like a foothold, stronghold. And I always tell people, when we don't forget, well, okay, for myself, when I held unforgiveness, like I was under a veil of deception and I could not see clearly anymore. So it opened up a door to deception. And I really believe that that had a lot to do with me eventually relapsing. But the enemy is so patient and just chips away little by little. That's why compromises are so bad, because you think you're getting away with something or it's not a big deal. And he's, uh, gaining a foothold. I mean, just he's gaining ground. And so, I was doing little thing here, and it took like 2-3 years of little compromise here, a little offense here, a little, not forgiving, da 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 da, and then all of a sudden, and this happened both times, where all of a sudden, bam, and I'm like, what the heck? How did I get here? Like, it was, you know, but now looking back, I can see how little by little by little things led up, and then all of a sudden it was like wham, just all of a sudden I'm like drunk and I'm in a bar, and or doing heroin again. And yeah, it was crazy. But what was your question again?
That's
That
okay.
was good. No, that was a good answer. Yeah.
Yeah,
um
I was
oh
just asking about how surrender and obedience overcame the enemy in your life in a lot of.
oh well, okay, when I first got saved, I wanted to be obedient, but um because I hadn't counted the cost, because I didn't know what the cost was. I just thought I'm good. I didn't know what being a Christian was. I was like, um, you know, I don't know. I don't know what I thought, but the more trials, the more I went through, and because I was in a marriage that I wasn't, you know, I was like, and then I got pregnant, and I had just started my career working in like a high-end salon, and working on people in the movie industry, TV, just and very worldly, and I was like loving it, and you know and even back then I was sharing a little bit. I was sharing Jesus with my clients, and but like I that's when I started, like, my coworkers, it's like, hey, you want to go like have a drink, or you want to, and it was like, oh, all right. And then in the meantime, I'm taking Vicodin and Soma, with that, like, on the down low. Nobody knew. And so going to the bar and drinking along with taking the pills, then it was like, yeah, I went a few times. And then after a few times, I asked one of my friends, like, hey, let's go to Hollywood. And then within 20 minutes going in my old club, somebody offered me cocaine. And then it was all bam, like downhill from there. It was like, oh my goodness. It was just, yeah. And very soon after, yeah. Okay. So then, but see, and then I just went through hell with that relapse, and ended up on Skid Row. for only a short amount of time. You know, I really would like to do this again. I mean, because there's so much, but I mean, not again, like to because it's just so much that God has taught me through my mistakes, you know, that are, I believe, are important for people to possibly learn so they can avoid
Yeah.
doing the same thing, because 7 times worse is no joke. Like,
Yeah.
man, it's no
Yeah.
joke. Went back, it was like so way much worse. And then the last time, I mean, it was 2 times that were like actual, like, going back out, you know. Because I never did anything halfway. It's all or nothing, you know. So when I walked away the first time, it was way worse. That's when I started doing heroin and jumped off the 8-story building trying to commit suicide. um and then when and then I got clean, and then I was at the dream center. I was like doing the prostitute outreach, blah blah blah. Then I got cancer after helping Melissa, and all that satanic stuff, you know, getting on Satan's hit list. and then ending up back on Skid Row, and then for almost 4 years, then coming back, and that's when I knew, like, something, I needed deliverance. Like, I didn't know that's deliverance. I didn't know that word actually. I mean, I knew I needed to be set free and, yeah, delivered, but deliverance hadn't really been. It had just started being on, like, talked about and stuff, like, for in my circle. I mean, people I knew, you know. It was, I was going to a church in San Juan Capistrano, and I just started going with an old friend of mine. And but okay, so when I first got off the street, I heard voices non-stop. It was tormenting. It was so awful. And I had I had heard voices before when I jumped off the building. Well, not the 8-story, but I jumped out of a second-story window too, and that's the time when I literally heard voices saying, "You're so stupid. You deserve to die. You might as well jump." Just like, you know, and I jumped. But and I probably heard voices when I jumped off the 8-story building, but I had shot a bunch of speedballs, and I was just so loaded that, from what I heard, that from people who saw me, they said I was just so, like, intoxicated that I could hardly talk. So um but when I got clean this last time, it was like backwards. Like, this time, God didn't deliver me right away. It was like, first I quit using heroin, then I quit crack, then I quit methadone, then weed and alcohol, and then cigarettes were always an issue, like, even right before I came to the treatment center. But yeah, I that's when I realized I something was seriously wrong, because I could not stop. My friend, he was taking me to this church in San Juan Capistrano, and I was like, I wanted to be free. I would watch these people who were worshiping, and they were very prophetic and just charismatic, but, like, you know, with the flags and dancing around, and, you know, and I remember I had been about a month that I'd been going there, and I kind of was like, are these people real or what? And then even though I'd been around charismatics, but not quite so charismatic, but I remember I really wanted to be free. And I'm like, God, I knew the tools to be free, because it's easy to get free, but to stay free is a completely different thing. You have to put in your work. And so God delivered me the first time, just whoo, took away the desire. I was like, and but to stay clean, I wasn't doing the what I needed to do, and live an honest program. And then so when I came back, I knew, well, because then I went through discipleship. When the first time I relapsed after I got clean, I went through discipleship where I learned what compromise was. I learned how to stay clean and the things that I needed to do to stay clean, not just to stay clean, but to walk, how to walk as a believer. And then so then when I went back out, and I came back because I thought about going back to a program, but then I was like, no, I know what I need to do. Like, going through a program is not gonna, I could go through a program easy, just like, do time in jail or whatever, because it's like, just follow the rules. But now I need to do this for me, and without somebody telling me what I had to do. And so when I'm like, I'm gonna do this, I started praying, I started fasting, and just like I cut out everything, like secular, music, movies, whatever, and just started really reading the word and memorizing scripture. And then I'm still going to this church, and after about a month, I was like sitting there, and now I look at it and I think that the demons were just like raging, like, what is going on? It's not working, because I'm just pushing, like doing what I needed to do, but I was still hearing the voices. And then I go to church, I'm sitting there, and I'm watching people, and I'm like, these people are fake. Like, this is what I'm hearing. These people are fake. God's not doing anything. You're not the same. You're not like these people. Da 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 da. Just lies, lies, lies. But I'm listening to them because I'm thinking it's kind of me thinking this too. But then, because it's really, unless you know about spiritual warfare and that the voices aren't always yours, so I'm like thinking, yeah, these people are fake, whatever. And so right after the service, I walked up to my friend. I said, dude, just, God's not doing anything, take me downtown, I'm gonna get a bag of dope. And he was like, oh my gosh. And right when we were walking out of the church, this woman came up to me. She goes, excuse me, can I talk to you? And she's like, hi, my name is Karen. God has been bringing your face to mind every day this week. I've been praying for you. And she goes, he told me you're in a lot of pain and he wants to set you free. Can I pray for you? And I said, hell yeah, you can pray for me. Because I was like, I knew that it was God. Like, I knew, I'm like, oh my God. Like, I was at my breaking point, and, still very carnal. Sorry for saying hell, but I was like, man, yeah, like I knew. But then I still had unbelief, because I'm like, is it really going to do anything? What is she going to, what is this? So she and another lady, she had asked me if she could bring this one guy and to pray for me. And I said, no. And just because I didn't want a man around me, but yeah. Um, so she brought a woman, and we were in a room for like, I don't know, 3 hours, but, they took me through repentance and renouncing, and she was very prophetic. She could like see the throne, and I don't know, she would describe things and she'd ask me questions, and then I would renounce things. And while I was doing it, I'm like, okay. And I remember her saying like she could see Satan pacing back and forth, um, and he was getting weaker and weaker. And I was like, okay, but I don't know that I didn't feel anything, and I was like, I don't know if this is even gonna work. And but after we were done, I was like, thank you. I felt lighter. Um, I went home and I noticed I didn't hear any voices. And so I was like, well, let's see how long this lasts. And then I'd say about after a week, I was like, I think I'm free. And it was crazy because I don't think I realized how much bondage I was in until I was free. And I was like, oh my God, I'm free. I'm free. And yeah, it was awesome. And that started the journey to being able to, which led to more deliverance and casting out stuff. But it was a process. It just, I mean, because it was so bad when I went back out the second time, I almost died like several times, and from people trying to kill me, and it's like, oh, and then prostituting again, and this time like, from off the street, and just so much like horrific, crazy exposure to all kinds of evil. I mean, Skid Row is no joke. And so there was that, and there were just demons, like just everywhere. And yeah, there was a store that we could get high, you could get drugs there, and the guy who owned it was like a voodoo warlock, or just, and I don't know what he was doing. I mean, just crazy stuff. And it was very demonic. And yeah, when I still had my dog and I tried to bring him there, he would just freak out. He would not, he'd put on his brakes. I'd have to pick him up and carry him inside because he was just like trembling. He didn't, it was so bad. But yeah. And then I went through deliverance with Bob Larson, because I went through his International School of Exorcism. And that's when yeah, when I realized I had Jezebel. So, yeah, but I don't know how much more time we have, but um,
Well, we have about 9 minutes.
anybody want to say anything? I don't know.
We have about 9 minutes
Okay.
left on this. And we probably should wrap it up. And then maybe we can
Yeah.
finish this conversation another time. What do you think, Connie?
Okay.
I think that'd be great. I mean, it really should be, I'd like to finish it up. As far as, there's more. I don't think that we got all the way through. So we might have to just,
Not
definitely,
nearly.
yeah, do a second. How long have you been at the Dream Center now, hun?
Only since October last year.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And
But 5 years ago, God told me, when the first time I came back on campus,
uh,
and I was looking up at the building, and the Holy Spirit said, "You're going to be living here again one day." And I was
wow.
like, and I had just gotten my apartment, and I'm like, I just got my apartment, Lord. And but then I was like, okay, if you want me back here, you'll change my heart, and you'll
Yeah.
you'll work it out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That's awesome.
So,
Awesome.
but he also told me when I was in discipleship that I would the church I would be going to this, I would be part of the church for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
even though I left many times, God always brought me back. Yeah, I'm so grateful for the leadership here, because it's like they welcome me back, and I'm just grateful. Yeah, they really helped me. They helped me when I had cancer, you know. Yeah, I'm just grateful. Yeah, so I wanted to give back. I want to serve. I'm a volunteer, but I live here rent free, and that's fine with me. I mean, of course, that's fine with me, but I'm fine, you know,
Yeah.
just volunteering. I think it's a privilege to
Yeah.
serve. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I don't. Yeah, I think it's an honor. So I'm grateful, and I know God brought me back here specifically for a reason, and as such a time as this. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have anything else you want to bring
No,
up?
I just want to thank her for, sharing today. And it's just a
Thank
lot.
you.
Well, there's no way that you can put all those years into just a few minutes. I believe me, I've tried. Nancy knows.
No,
It doesn't, yeah, it doesn't work very well, but you did great, honey. So
And I appreciate
thank you.
you being so vulnerable, Laurie.
yeah,
And I know there is so much more we can talk
yeah,
about, and
absolutely.
we will talk about this more
Other
later,
time.
Laurie. So thank you for joining us.
Excited to be here.
Thank you.